Welcome to Boatcast, a podcast on a boat. The whole idea of this podcast is we float with the stories. This is a part of a larger show which is called Amphibian Aesthetics, which is brought to you by Ishara House and Ari Archives, and generously supported by Muziris Heritage Project. Today, our guest for this show is Dr. Sreekala Sivasankaran. Have I said it right, ma'am?
Right.
From former associate professor of Janapada Sampada division of Indira Gandhi National Centre for Arts, a PhD in West Asian Studies from the School of International Studies, JNU, right? And you also did a stint in Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And she's an expert of Jewish history and migration. The documentary was so honest, so raw, so beautiful, well done. Was that your voice?
Yes.
It was it,
Part of it was.
Yeah. And as we say, Boatcast is float with the stories. We float, we gently move. There is no, she can cut me, she can say I am wrong, and that is what is nice about it, you know. That's because the river doesn't take a form. So let's talk about, there is a huge and probably this area where we are in between Kodangallur and has seen Christian settlements, early Christian settlement, the first mosque, I think, near Kodangallur, and between from where we picked you up, Mattancherry to here, there are 3 to 4 synagogues, right? So, which is amazing, you know. I have seen. I have not seen a collection of synagogues in any place more than this, you know, this area. Am I right?
Maybe, yeah. Kerala has a lot of synagogues. In fact, not 4 or 5. There are something like 7 or 8 synagogues.
Oh.
Yeah, not just in Mattancherry and Fort Kochi, but also in Ernakulam, in the larger part of Ernakulam. And in places like Mala, Chendamangalam, Paravur, all have synagogues.
So the one in Chendamangalam is the biggest one?
Paravur may be the biggest.
Paravur, yeah.
Chendamangalam is very old, and it has a very old tombstone dating back to 13th century. Yeah, of Hebrew inscriptions and all.
Chendamangalam is where a family used to stay right next to the synagogue, if I'm not mistaken. A family, a Jewish family.
Yes, right.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, just at the entrance itself.
At the entrance, yes.
That is how the Jewish congregations were. There is this prayer hall or the synagogue, and then they will be in the 2 sides of that lane. And most of these lanes or streets were called Jew Street, or Synagogue Lane, or Jewish Street.
I don't see any other place in India which has a Jew street. Do you know any other state?
In Bombay, maybe.
Nagpada, but not
to this extent.
Not to this extent. So, what are the main theories that the Jewish arrived to the Kerala coast? There may be some theories. So, what is your view on that?
Yeah, there are several theories, in fact. I mean, not theories, but rather beliefs, I would say, or oral traditions of the communities, more precisely, relating their origin to very ancient times. One belief is that probably they have arrived as early as the King Solomon's times. Like King Solomon's ship must have come here. Kerala was rich in all those goods which they badly sought after. like sandalwood and peacocks and pepper and spices and all those things. Ivory was also much sought after by traders. So along with them, the Jewish merchants might have come and settled down here also, they believe. And today, some philological evidence is cited as kind of a cultural exchange that might have taken place in those times. For example, there are some South Indian and Sanskrit words in Hebrew. Yeah, like for peacock, tuki is kind of a derivative of that is being used in Hebrew, and Sanskrit word for sandalwood, almug, valgam is being used in Hebrew. So these were sort of often cited as examples. Maybe at that time itself, they exchanged language for goods, as early as Solomon's time. And then another belief or theory is that there were two major exiles in Jerusalem for Jews to scatter around the world and settling in ancient diaspora. So in that itself must have reached the coast of Kerala, like for example the Babylonian captivity of Nebuchadnezzar, those times in BC. And another theory relates to the Second Temple destruction in 70 AD and things like that. So the community perception is that they were part of ancient diaspora, and they came to the even not just as traders but also fleeing kind of this kind of situations in their home. And there are also Christian traditions which speak about Jewish presence in Kerala, in very early times. For example, some say that when Jesus was alive, Saint Thomas Apostle came here and he was welcomed by a Jewish flute player. So it's a folk tale, so which means that Jews were already there, And there is another community of Canaanite Christians in Kerala, a very old community, who are also called Jewish Christians. Which means they do preserve some of the Jewish tenets in their rituals and community identity. And they are very endogamous groups. They don't mix with other Christians also. So they think they are a very special group in between Jews and Christians. The Jewish Christians they are called. So these are all sociological evidences to say that, of course, there must have been probably a very old settlement of Jews in Kerala. But anyway, we do have documentary evidence from 11th century AD. That is in the form of copper plates. Copper plates given by the Kodungalur Raja, Bhaskara Ravivarman, to one Mr. Joseph Rabban, a Jewish leader, a merchant at that time in Kodungalur, and granting a lot of privileges of nobility, which were actually given to other high-class groups in Kerala, high-status groups in Kerala. For example, the right to ride an elephant, the right to travel in palanquin in those standards, and the right to hold ceremonial lamps, etc., etc., and also exemption from taxes, and the right to collect tolls, and so many are described in those copper plates. Even the Syrian Christian community have received such plates, even much earlier also. They all have got, and the Jews have been given also a piece of land called Anjuvannam. Anjuvannam as a trade guild or something like that in Kodungalur itself. So you can see that Jews were very much favored, like all other communities in Kerala, like the Muslims and like the Christians. They were also very much a favored community in under the native rulers from very early times.
So we were talking to Dr. Tarakan, and he was saying that that a lot of demands were made by the middle class, and now maybe they would, and the rulers of this area, either Kochi or Kodangallur, all these rulers were large-hearted, benevolent, and maybe had a foresight. Maybe they did have a foresight that this community might be beneficial to us.
Absolutely. That was always there because trade was so much active in this area. Yeah. International trade was so much active. Sea trade was so much active in the area. And in Kerala, there was also a conspicuous absence of a specific, in the traditional social order, a specific community engaged in trade. We don't find that, like the Vaishya community in the northern parts of India. We don't find that in Kerala. So that is a space which most of these traders might have filled because they were also given such caste status itself, But even then, it is unseen in any part of the world, like this kind of benevolence, this kind of all-out kind of encouragement of multicultural setting in Kerala. And if you really know, in other parts also we have Muslims and Hindus and Christians living together, Jews also living together, but Kerala never recorded a communal riot. And Kerala, there was never any significant, noteworthy kind of clash or anything between communities. Of course, there must have been give and take and likes and dislikes. That's a different story, like all stories. But there is no such major clashes or riots in this part of the world. So that kind of sets this thing apart, and I believe a great deal of it we must give it to the native rulers. Yeah, at that time. Yeah.
And when I was given this, and I was talking, I had given your name and wanted. We was a little worried, and we are talking about Jewish settlement and especially in today's time, what environment exists today, and the absolutism either side, But what you say is so true, that this is an area where there is a beautiful intermingling, no riots, how they mixed with each other, the trade was... so if chronologically we were to say, now there are primarily two communities. Yes. One is the Paradesi Jew and one is the Malabari Jew.
Right.
So the Malabari Jews came in earlier. Yes. So if you can throw some light on that.
Yeah. So what I was saying in the beginning, all these theories about the ancient settlements, the Malabari Jews, the Malabari section, or the so-called indigenous Jews or the black Jews, because of their darker skin, they claim these oldest settlements in Kerala, and they were mainly settled in, apart from Kodangallur, they were also settled in Mala, Chendamangalam, Paravur, and also in different parts of Ernakulam. And then came in the medieval times as traders, and also fleeing persecutions in Baghdad, and also a very small period of Dawood Pasha, and then the Spanish Inquisition. So there were Jews who came from those areas and the Middle East in around 13th, 14th centuries. They settled mainly in Mattancherry.
Okay.
Yeah. And also when
these are the
Paradesi or the foreign Jews, the white, so-called white Jews. And these two communities were very distinct in the sense that, they had the way they looked and the way they did not intermarry, they did not even social distances were kept among them. Even some scholars suspect that, mostly like the influence of the caste system have creeped into the Jewry, and also, separating them in many different ways. But again, without much, big issues that we could talk about, but they had their own separate settlements. And there were some Jews from Malabar section who actually fought for the entry into the white Jewish synagogue in Mattancherry and all that. There is one Mr. A.B. Salem. I don't know.
Yes.
Of A.B. Salem.
He was also involved in some political movement.
Yes, he was a Gandhian.
Gandhian,
and he staged a satyagraha in front of Mattancherry synagogue, saying that all the black Jews should be allowed entry, and eventually they had.
But he was a black Jew. He was a Malabari.
He was a Malabari Jew. And also he was kind of a leader of the community. And when the Jews started migrating to Israel in 1950s, there was some problem and their migration was stopped for a while because there was some rumors that the Jews had elephantiasis or some diseases were prevalent in Cochin.
Which year?
It's in 1950s, early 50s. So the immigration was stopped for some time, to check what kind of, diseases that were prevalent in Cochin. And then A.B. Salem, so many people actually bought their visas and made all arrangements to go. Some had even traveled to Bombay, and they were all like waiting in limbo, like what to do. And suddenly it was stopped, and they had actually sold out their properties in Cochin to go to Israel. So then it was A.B. Salem who went to Israel and met with the then president, and he actually had a conversation directly with the president there and the Jewish agency, and with his efforts the immigration restarted soon after.
Okay, so if we were to say this is interesting. So when I bookmarked something from what you were saying, we always, when you talk about color and race and all that, we call white supremacists who say that we were before you and you came in as. But here in this case, actually the black Malabari Jews were the early settlers. But how come? I think, did they intermingle with or were
the native population,
or were they Abyssinians, or were they African origins, or
why they were black? You're saying? Black Jews is only with reference to the white Jews. It is the white Jews called them black Jews. They were not black. They were of the usual Malabari color, darker skin than the fairer skinned, Baghdadis. So they were not even the Sahibs of Britain. So it was something like, So even otherwise, all this controversy regarding purity of origin based on color, etc., there is very little base in all these arguments. Because, if you look at Middle East or if you look at Jerusalem, it's all part of the Asia, West Asia. It's not a European country where everybody would look like a European white man or, white woman. I mean, it's an Eastern country. So the skin color is not the same in all Jews. I mean, we cannot say that the European Jew is the model. I mean, it has been like that for a long time in art and literature, because all the painters drew the
visual representation. I was going to tell you, because Jesus,
it's like the white, white. He need not be, he may be a stand skin man. So it's all visual representations that created this thing, and top of it is racism, casteism, all getting mixed up, and social distances. But the interesting fact is that the Malabar Jews, being the largest segment of Jews, and also Jews who have been in contact with world Jewry, And even though this is a very tiny community, even at the peak of their population, they were just 2,500 or something like that. That is the highest population recorded about, of the Cochin Jews. But their fame was, much large among the Jewry in other parts of the world. There were Jewish visitors visiting them on and off throughout centuries. So they were very well versed in the religious aspects, and they are also known as very orthodox in their religious practices. Or not orthodox in the rabbinical sense, because there is no rabbis in the Cochin Jews. There are only cantors or Hassans who conducted the prayers. It's not
So what is the hierarchy? Rabbi, cantor, Hassan?
No, there's no rabbi among the Cochin Jews. It is the cantor who conducts. It's not a hierarchy as such. It's a cantor who actually conducts the affairs of the religious affairs of the synagogue, and then the elders of the community wield a lot of power. It is in consultation with them that he would take decisions regarding the community and so on.
Was this particular to the Cochin Jews,
Yes.
or is it a Jewish tradition itself?
No, it's very peculiar to the Cochin Jews.
Okay. Another thing I see is in the architecture of the synagogues. They are very Malabari architecture, right? So yeah, that's in what ways did the later migrations that change the composition, which you have actually touched upon, but the Paradesis came in actually some 500, 600 years later?
Yeah.
Huh? So what made them come? You said that...
Yeah, it is also, there were also traders among them, very big traders among them, and today we're talking about the corders and the among the white Jewish communities. They were probably the Baghdadi origin, and there were also people from Spain and Spanish origin, and who were also into big business. And there were also people fleeing persecutions and all that. But they were all like very much, they had a very unique way of integration in the Kerala society, because they retained their original identities quite a lot, but at the same time they adopted the language. They spoke Malayalam at home, and all these white-skinned people sitting and very fluent in Malayalam, talking about literature and all that, and even clothes and all. Apart from their religion, they were completely Malayalis also, That's a very incredible part of the Jewry in Kerala. And synagogues, yes. If you look at all these synagogues, they all have a similarity, which means that they followed a style of their own.
Yes.
And even then, even when they followed their own style, which is similar to the churches and also to the mosques in Kerala, and there's a lot of give and take, and also the temples, and they also have retained their own peculiar distinct aspects, which are distinct from the world Jewry. For example, if you go inside a Cochinese synagogue, you will find two reading tables for reading the Torah. And there are women's booths separate from the men's gallery. And it is women will be happily sitting there and watching all the deliberation going by. And women were allowed to sing and participate in the prayers like that. Even though they did not conduct the prayers, they were very much part of the congregation in a very they will say we had a very high position in the synagogue. And there are so many symbols, for example, there are these stone lamps which are like thrust into the walls of a synagogue, which is exactly like which you find in some of the temples here. So they uninhibitedly they have taken from other cultures, but while maintaining their distinct peculiarities. And the woodwork, if you have noticed,
yes.
it's amazing. Typical of the Kerala woodwork and carvings and painted woodwork. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and even the roofs.
Even the roofs and
Yeah, I find them. But what is so typical of the Jewish, the chandeliers are very Jewish.
the chandeliers are Jewish, and especially the Paradesi section. They have gone a little more cosmopolitan in there. If you have seen that clock tower, it has Hebrew, Malayalam, and Roman, Latin numerals.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Now I will take a look.
Yeah, you must go and take a look. I mean, it's very interesting actually. It's adjacent to the synagogue is the temple. Just one wall separate.
In Mattancherry. Yes.
And next to that is a mosque. And it's like very close proximity. And for centuries, I mean, isn't it amazing?
It is. And
nobody complains about anything. And nowadays, people say, like, what?
But it is true to this area also where we are heading towards.
Yes.
So there is a church. I think it's that Chendamangalam in that area. Mosque
and synagogue.
Synagogue and a church. So it's so typical.
So typical of.
Is that because they needed to work with each other and maintain the harmony, and it made a lot of sense?
I mean, that need is everywhere, isn't it, Zahir? I mean, if you look at Bombay, it's also a commercial center where people need each other. But that doesn't mean there wasn't any problem. But what I'm saying is here, there was something called a traditional kind of thing working. I mean, it has been very centuries old, It's not something, a new necessity of modern times, a new secularist mode or something coming. Of course, it is there, but it has centuries of existence here. I mean, that is what makes this place more interesting.
In fact, modern times has become more divisive than
divisive.
And so
most recent times.
No, so that comes to also the rulers, either.
I would definitely give a lot to the Cochin Rajas, in the sense that if you go through all those records, I mean, the privileges which the Muslim communities or the Christian communities or the Jews have received under the Rajas, it's unheard of, like all these documents say, these rights are bestowed on them as long as the moon and sun shall endure.
That's what it says?
Perpetuity, yes.
Oh,
that
wow.
is the exact wording of it. As long as the moon and sun shall endure, So it so beautifully describes like the benevolence, the sky is the limit, It's like
which is there in the
Paravur
synagogue. Yes, I've seen
a replica of the copper plates kept there. Yeah.
But this Paravur had not a Raja, but I went to a palace there, which is
Pali
not
Tachan.
Pali, yeah.
He's a local chieftain actually.
Was he involved in?
Yeah. He was a great protector of Paliam family. Was a great protector of the Jewish community, because there was some period where there were some issues happened to them and they gave protection to the Jews, and which was later mentioned recently in some, the family was honored by Jewry in America or somebody for this, as a reward to the historical kindness.
What Sreekala ji, most of the thing we see is that rulers actually the other community which comes so that they can take but this
keep at a distance, this is your job, but it's not like that. It's like you
but I think it is because of the need for the trade, and they understood
need for the trade was very much there, because as I said, they were also filling a gap of traders and business people in Kerala society. And even then, it was great gesture from that, and it was somehow sort of inbuilt in this landscape and culture, I would say, because I can't find a comparison to this anywhere.
In your documentary, there is a story of a lady who, Anna Well, in your documentary I saw that she, in this area, what is that story?
Ruby Daniel?
Yeah, Ruby Daniel, yeah.
Ruby Daniel is...
That was a beautiful story, and I wanted you to, I didn't write that here, but I found that story such a human story. You know? So if you can tell us the story, because this is all about floating with the stories.
Okay. Ruby Daniel is from a third group of Jews in Kerala. Oh. Now I am telling you. Because apart from the Malabar Jews and the Paradesi Jews, there was a section of brown Jews who were the progeny of mixed marriages between, rarely that, whenever that happened, and their children were part of this third group. Then you can imagine the internal kind of hierarchies were very strong, among the Jews. So externally, there were no clashes between religious groups. Internally, there were a lot of divisions and keeping away and things like that. That's what I'm saying. Caste-like attitudes were very much there. And also the whole Jewish preoccupation with the purity of races and things like that, And Ruby Daniel belongs to the brown Jews section, and she was employed in the Royal Indian Navy during the Second World War. And then Ruby's family went to Israel, and she was settled in the kibbutz Neot Mordechai in Israel. And she wrote a book on her legacy and history, and she remembers a lot of the stories about women in Kerala, and her book is full of tales about different communities, and you can see how then she says in that we are the pampered Jews of Malabar. We were spoiled and pampered by the local population and the rulers and things like that. And I also want to add that when I say the Jews, along with the other communities, lived in such harmony that when they migrated first to Israel in the 1950s, the then president actually hailed the Cochin Jews for their peaceful coexistence history. In his speech, he mentioned this. So it was that kind of, Cochin Jews meant that. And today when I look at all these histories, sometimes I feel quite sad also, considering the whole politics and the Israel's war on Palestinians, and most of the Cochin Jews were settled on border with the Palestinians, sometimes encroaching into their settlements, encroaching into their land, but always living, that is what, the Israeli leaders thought, okay, anyway, they always lived with Muslims and other communities, so they would be okay here, like that. So I was just hoping, I'm still hoping that, this legacy would be kept alive and would be a model for others also in Israel, because that much kind of incredible, the multiculturalism from this part of the world. And that much legacy they should keep alive, and that memory they should keep alive, and also pass down to generations. Say that, look, this is where we have come from. We must emulate this in wherever we go. But all this news that coming from that side, sometimes make us suspect.
Yeah. So, as I'm saying, as we are getting modern, we are getting more divisive and insular, and there's so much hatred, which you were saying was not.
And also politically, when it is, spearheaded or supported, and people do. It is also happening among. I mean, there were a lot of in Israel. There were a lot of Jews who were supporters of Labour Party in the beginning, but gradually they all shifted to the right and far right sections, because their settlements were the ones which were bordering with the Palestinians, and all these clashes started, reflecting on them, and they have started making choices between the available two parties, and so it's a very difficult spectrum. That is why these stories that we speak now are so important. And at one point in Fort Kochi itself, it is not just Jews and Muslims and Christians and Hindus, but around 40-50 different communities live together.
That's exactly what in Matancheri itself.
Matancheri itself,
What?
Konkanis and Gujaratis and so many different languages.
Kashmiris?
Kashmir, there's a Kashmiri shop in Matancheri.
Yeah.
So if this was possible in one area, you are right in asking, like, what makes it possible? I mean, there must be something, more than the need of trade, and there must be something of a cultural wisdom that must be guiding, of living together like this for long years. That cultural wisdom must be guiding it, I must say, I hope it is indestructible despite all the political propaganda or the kind of hatred that people today speak of.
Yeah, that is why this conversation was important, because it's not that one religion is ever, or one community is ever the issue. It is the people in that, the political leaders or a few of them who mechanize this, and they have the power. So, and that really may be the issue which was not there earlier. So coming to leaders of Jewish community, A.B. Salem was there, and there was another leader or another, and quite a few. So of them, some of them started the ferry system and the electric.
Coder family.
Coder? So
Coders among the Paradesi community of the Matancheri community, they were very wealthy business people. They were very benevolent themselves. They were into charity, and they were, they actually filled the cultural kind of, scenario in Cochin. And yes, they ran a ferry here from Fort Kochi to Matancheri to this area, Waipin. And they also had an electric company and is instrumental in the electrification of the state itself. They were big time business people. If you have looked at the synagogue, you can see, from where they have brought the tiles with Chinese willow patterns and, chandeliers and all those things.
And how in those days to get it safely here is a big task itself.
Yeah. Actually, they are descendants of one family called Rahabi. Rahabis were, during the Dutch period, they were very successful business people, very successful. And Rahabis were, favorites of both the local Rajas as well as the colonial people. So they were in between, like agents communicating, and they were even given positions in important decision-making affairs, it is said. And the Dutch period is also known as a golden age for Jews of Kerala. Yeah. That is the time their trade and business were at the peak. And their community life was flourishing and, culturally also speaking. So it is considered one of the golden phases for the... then the British came, more or less peaceful existence, and then the Indian independence came and the Israeli state was formed. Then there was a little bit of Zionist activity in Cochin at that time, asking people to immigrate. And since the Cochin Jews were very devout, and for them, a place where Judaism is a way of life, they had that kind of yearning to go to the promised land and things like that, because every day they pray and they celebrated all their festivals in Kerala with utmost fervor and grand celebrations.
So I'm coming to the
Yeah.
festivals now.
Yeah.
So how was the Sabbats and the festivals and and all the other festivals celebrated strictly according to the tradition, or was there?
According to the tradition, strictly according to that tradition, but with local flavors. Like I said, for example, Sukkot, there's a festival, Sukkot, I think they call Chukunda Perunal. In Malayalam, they have a Malayalam name for it.
Okay.
It is actually a name derived from a local delicacy which they made from dried ginger sweet, that is Chukunda.
Okay.
So during that festival, they would be making this and, having a lot of Chukunda. So they would call it Chukunda Perunal. And their Simha Torah, the celebration of Torahs, was a grand affair in Cochin. And so that even during the Simha Torah time, visitors from abroad would come to visit the Cochini Simha Torah.
This was till how lately?
Yeah, in maybe 2-3 centuries it has been so. There are so many visitors writing about the Cochini Simha Torah. Yeah, and so that's why I said they were very famous out in the world Jewry, and they celebrated Yom Kippur and then Purim festival and all their festivals, and their marriages would last for 2 weeks. It's like an elaborate procession, and when all the Jewish aspects would be on display. And yeah, so they were all grand events, and these things have changed when they went to Israel. Since marriages have become just one-day affair now. But what is unchanged even there is like they very, firmly are stuck with their synagogue traditions. And to the extent that they even transported a synagogue from here to Israel by ship. Yeah. Then entire synagogue was transported.
Tell me more about this.
They have transplanted. There is nothing more to say. They have transplanted an entire synagogue, and they in Nevatim, in the settlement in Israel, they have made 2-3 Cochini synagogues. So it's not like this. Now they are making it everywhere, which in Israel doesn't have that much of geographical space, but by the way. But it is very sacred to them, the Cochini traditions, They keep their distinct traditions apart from the, mainstream Judaism. Whereas the Paradesi Jews, their whole immigration was geared towards the West, not to Israel, Those who went to Israel also had no problem merging with the larger Iraqi community, Iraqi Jews there. But the Cochin Jews don't mix with even the Paradesi Jews in Israel also. Even with the Ben Israeli youngsters would come and tell me, like, your Cochinis don't marry us. Because they are very, very much particular about, Cochini marrying Cochini and continuing their tradition. Yeah, like that.
So how, if we were to put a number to it, how many of the really Cochini or Malabari Jews are there today? Like if we were to say about the Parsi community. So
in India?
How many of them?
Cochini is very few. Maybe less than 10. Cochini
and across the world?
Across the world. In Israel it would be around 80,000.
Oh, still quite a small number.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about the entire Indian Jews. The Cochin Jews would be around 15,000.
That's all?
Yeah, that's all.
So that is a worry, and they don't intermingle. They don't
intermingle much.
And
some families have. I have met some families who have married the European Jews.
But are they excommunicated from the family if they marry?
No, not excommunication or anything. They don't do that way. But it's naturally understood that, our tunes are sacred to us, our traditions are important to us, that kind of.
So, in the course of your conversation, you and I don't want to touch upon that. So, what we are actually talking, and I want to tell the viewers, is such a heritage and beautiful tradition, and the existence of it, and where you said Zionism came, but it didn't really have a place here, and that actually is such an important aspect. Which we
Or rather, we should separate the Zionism. Like one is of religious orientation, the political Zionism. It never worked here, it wasn't there. And another important thing I want to talk about is, it is among the Muslims also, we have something called Arabic Malayalam.
Oh, is it?
It's a kind of mix of Arabic and Malayalam together. And there is a whole corpus of songs and traditions, stories, written in Arabic Malayalam, and which mainly the women and all who sang, and Similarly, the Jews also had Hebrew-Malayalam.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. So even when they spoke Malayalam, and they knew some Hebrew, which is for the prayer songs and things like that. And it is Hebrew Malayalam which the women used to sing through centuries. So there is again a corpus of Hebrew Malayalam songs which are now unearthed and published in joint collaboration with the Jewish scholars and the Malayali scholars who passed away recently, Zakaria, and all had worked very hard to translate them. Very interesting work, something called Midrash. Midrash is actually a retelling of biblical stories. So these women's songs were drawing heavily from those Midrash. And we also see that women not only sang, women also participated in composing those songs. And then they wrote them down in notebooks. And these notebooks, they were never printed earlier. These notebooks were handed down through generations, and now they are being collected and being printed, and also CDs were made. And I don't know if IGNCA archives already have the Hebrew Malayalam songs. You must have heard that in the beginning of my documentary, which narrate a lot of humorous stories, marriages, and also the synagogue constructions are mentioned in. So we get a lot of information from the Hebrew Malayalam songs.
Yesterday, I was in an Uber and I was listening, and it's so amazing that, and I'm talking to you today, there was this Malayalam song playing, and the refrain behind was Hava Nagila Hava.
Really?
Yeah. And it was in the Uber. It's a typical commercial Malayalam. So it does creep in whatever. Food. Let's talk about food. You were talking about some ginger and coconut, which is so typically Kerala. Did coconut play a part in their cuisine?
Definitely. I mean, coconut was kosher.
Yeah, was it?
Yes, very much. And most of their preparations had this, and they had their own kind of sweets and all with the local materials only, but they do. It's very different from general
Tell me one of them. That one is with coconut and something.
I am also forgetting the name. That's why
No, but just tell me how it is, what it is made of, or what kind of sweet it is.
It looks like a momos.
Does it?
Yeah, like inside they would fill something. And I think chicken only they fill, chicken or something. It's more or less like momos. They make something. It's very tasty. And also something sweet they fill like that. And these are their special. And chicken was kind of their staple. And because they may not always get the fish they want according to the dietary laws. But chicken is always there. And they had their own butchers and all that. And they very strictly followed the dietary regulations. never mixing milk and meat and things like that. And otherwise, they also have, and they used to make lot of stuff with the jackfruit.
Oh, is
Like the payasam of the general Malayalis, the kheer they make, and they also make. Even in Israel, they make all this. They will carry jackfruit from here and they'll make it there. And kappa, tapioca, tapioca and fish curry is their favorite.
Oh, someday we will talk a little more about the food. Lastly, what were the relations between the Jews and the Indian community? And let's talk, we've spoken about the earlier times, but let's talk till the last Jews left. I read your piece on the last lady in Ruby. No, the lady who just passed away last year.
Queenie Hallegua.
Queenie Hallegua. First of all, I find when I was searching for her, she's taught a local artisan how to embroider in the Jewish style. It is so beautiful. Sarah Cohen. That's two different people, is it?
They are two different people, and they were
related?
the last.
Were they related?
They were all related, in fact. In the Jewtown, they were all related. But the Cohen family was different. Sarah Cohen's husband passed away, and then they more or less adopted a Muslim boy. Adopted in the sense that they were caretakers in the house. They were looking after the Taha Ibrahim's family, which I also spoke about in the film. And Queenie, in fact, very sad actually. I mean, she was the last community leader of the Paradesi Jews in Kerala. And with that, and maybe Kate Hallegua, her nephew, must be alive. I mean, even then, only one person cannot run the entire thing, So it must be gradually handed over to the archaeological department or something, unless some miraculous Jewish presence happens again. And we have only something around 5 to 10 maximum scattered all over Kerala, the Cochin Jews. And they had absolutely wonderful relations till the last time. I remember Queenie telling me, Sreekala, they never migrated. They, with all these things, the Kodas or the Halleguas, they never migrated. They said, we are so happy here. We were born here. We will die here. Doesn't matter, whatever happens.
Why should they also?
Yeah,
why should they? Why should anybody who is born in a particular place?
Yeah,
so when many people say, I'm so like when people migrated and when the partition happened. So when they ask me,
Absolutely.
we chose this land. So they have also. So I hope the government, the people, everybody preserves this tradition. Otherwise, we will have to transport.
This is actually a kind of making visible, these stories, in a way speaking. Because if you ask me some 30 years ago, when I first began my research on the Cochin Jewry particularly, there weren't much research or anything from the Indian side on this community. We just knew that there were synagogues and there were people, but now nobody knew exactly, their customs and traditions. Today you are hearing this song itself in Uber. So earlier it wasn't like that. There was very little knowledge about the community, but today people have known. So that is what I'm saying. Even unknowingly you live among. It didn't matter if you're a stranger, How is that? I mean, I find it very. You have your own temple, you have your own church and mosque and synagogue and your prayer halls, and you could live, happily like that.
Yeah, so we are coming to the end of this podcast. Thank you so much. And if you were to give a message of This whole podcast is about how living in peace and contributing to the place you live in. So if you want to tell the younger generation anything as a teacher, and your learning which you have learned, if you can say so now. Thank you for being here. Would you like to say something?
Actually, I think I have spoken a lot. Because
it was so interesting.
Yeah, because I hope the younger generation, I hope the younger generation of the Cochinis also, because they come back in search of their, ancestors' roots. They come as tourists. And I hope they all remember this and learn this and pass it down to their neighbors and their children. And this story of coexistence is unparalleled in any part of the world. And I hope this continues and we keep telling these stories so that, we don't forget.
Yes. These stories, these songs, and if there is any younger generation of Cochin Jews listening to this, or it reaches you, you're welcome and come. And both of us will be happy to talk to the third person, and I will just be a spectator where you both will be talking. I would love to be a fly on the wall and listen to it. Thank you so much, Sreekala ji, for coming, and it was a pleasure having you. I hope you had a good time too.